You're watching TVC Breakfast. Last week, President Buhari declined assent to 5 bills.
One of the bills is the Digital Rights and Freedom Bill, which seeks to protect human rights online. Azizat Olaoluwa has details.
On Wednesday, Senate President Bukola Saraki read 5 letters from President Muhammadu Buhari to members of the Senate on his decision to decline assent to Nigerian Film Commission Bill, Immigration Amendment Bill, Climate Change Bill, Chartered Institute of Pension Practitioners Bill, and the Digital Rights and Freedom Bill. The Digital Rights and Freedom Bill makes provision for the protection of human rights online and is praised by experts for its forward-looking provisions on human rights and its potential to help protect users of digital tools. And with President Buhari refusing to assent his signature, experts say they are worried.
Considering that Nigeria is the most populous nation in Africa, purportedly the giant of Africa, I think this sets us back. I think it was an opportunity for Nigeria to set an example, particularly in relation to the protection of digital rights. Now, when you talk about digital rights, you're talking about the protection of rights online. The rights which people have offline as human rights should also be protected online. We're talking about rights to freedom of speech, right to freedom of information, rights to privacy. And I think this sets us back in terms of setting an example.
The bill transmitted to the president weeks ago also seeks to protect internet users in Nigeria from infringement of their fundamental freedom and to guarantee application of human rights for users of digital platforms or digital media and for related matters. In a letter read on the floor of the Senate, the president said the bill covers too many technical subjects and fails to address any of them extensively. It's read, quote, "We therefore suggest that the scope of the bill should be limited to the protection of human rights within the digital environment to reduce the challenge of duplication and legislative conflict in the future." End quote.
If you also look at Section 18, it talks about the whistleblower. Now you find that it's also unclear in relation to that. I think so many other aspects, censorship, website blocking, you can't necessarily say that you can't block a website where the website is infringing copyright. Now you're necessarily giving rights and then you're taking back the rights. So many aspects of the bill, it talks about succession rights. We're not really clear about what exactly all this are aimed at. So I think certain aspects need to be revised.
The Digital Rights and Freedom Bill was conceived by Paradigm Initiative with Net Rights Coalition in 2015. It was introduced to Parliament in April 2016. Azizat Olaoluwa, TVC News.
All right, joining me from Ghana via Skype is Nnenna Ifeanyi-Ajufo. She is a law and technology expert and lecturer at the University of Lancaster in Ghana. Thank you for joining us this morning, Nnenna. Now,
thank you. Good morning.
When you look at the president's concern, which he says were technical subjects, do we have the structures in place to really implement all of these things if he had assented to that bill?
You read my mind. I would say no, we do not. A section I would point out to is a section that attempts to give rights to internet access, for example. That was quite worrying for me. Now, you are purportedly giving a right to internet access, and that means you have to put infrastructure in place for people to have access to the internet freely. Now, how that is going to be achieved in Nigeria, I do not know. Do we really have the infrastructure? I do not know. Now, a good aspect is that the bill attempts to provide that right for persons with disability. This is actually a very good example. We would have set an example in Africa, but if we have the infrastructure to do that, I doubt.
So why are people raising concerns that the president then did not assent to this bill when the structures are not in place?
I think because of the political climate, you know, the whole situation, the Senate president, the whole situation, I think people may actually think he's just outrightly rejecting the bill. I think it's the whole political situation, which I want to be very careful about what I say. But the truth is, in terms of some of the sections, I doubt that we really can tackle them the way it is provided for in the bill.
Then what will be a logical approach to addressing issues of cybercrime and bullying, especially in the climes we find ourselves?
Now, the Cybercrime Act talks about cyber stalking. It makes provision for that. And I think that is why he said, let's not duplicate laws. Now, the Digital Rights Bill is a different bill. If you look at it, for example, you begin to wonder if it's a Data Protection Act or a Data Protection Bill. So I just think that so many aspects, some of the aspects are just too ambiguous.
So how do we address this ambiguity beyond the duplication that the president has talked about? Because persons or people have had issues when it comes to rights, expression, freedom of expression online, and also when it comes to issues of cyberbullying.
Yes, I think we should aim for conceptual clarity. It's a good thing. I'm all for the bill. We should aim at conceptual clarity. We should clearly define what rights we're given. It's not just about cyberbullying. Yes, on the one hand, we have to curb cybercrime. And if we're not careful, we infringe on people's rights. But if you also look at this bill, if we're not careful, those rights are not being protected the way the bill is worded. You're giving privacy rights, but at the same time, you're giving so much rights for government and surveilling entities to still take away those rights. So it's not just about cyberbullying, it's one of them. But it's not just cyberbullying that the bill is focused on. There are more important, I'm not saying cyberbullying is not important, but there are more important privacy rights, freedom of speech. So we just need to get it right.
Now looking forward, another major issue has also been the issue of fake news on the rise. And so all of this also has to be looked into.
Yes.
How do we address this?
The same thing I'm talking about conceptual clarity. Because if you're trying to curb fake news, for example, then the Digital Rights Bill will not do it. Because it gives a right for people to have an online presence anonymously. I'm not saying it's wrong for people to have online rights and online existence anonymously. But then if I have an online existence anonymously, then of course I can go into fake news and nothing would actually be done. The only time it tried to curb that was when it says nobody shall pose as a legal entity and have passwords. How do you determine when the person has posed as a legal entity? Again, it's not just about legal entities. What about other entities existing in the same vein?
Now, it seems clear that there's some level of ambiguity concerning this bill. Why is there so much criticism of the president for not signing it into law?
In the first place, I would say that it would have been an opportunity for Nigeria to set an example in Africa. Nigeria is always at the forefront when you discuss cybercrime, and so it's very important we balance the rights to individuals online at the same time when you curb cybercrime. However, I think because of the political climate right now, what is happening in Nigeria, the elections, the Senate president having to step down, leave the Senate, I think people may actually just think he's refusing to assent to the bill because of all of that. But if you really consider it, I think the president has some points if you really look at the bill objectively.
All right, why is it necessary to protect rights online separately from the rights that are on ground right now?
You know, scholars would tell you that cyberspace is akin to a new state. It's like a world on its own. Now, traditionally, apart from international human rights are also enforced within the national legal framework. Now, the cyberspace is borderless. Cyberspace is not bounded by any geographical location or boundary. And so if you do not legally enforce the protection of human rights online, you would jeopardize the promotion of human rights. There are all different things entirely. The way the right to privacy is traditionally is different from the way the right to privacy is online. Freedom of speech is different the way it is online, because when you have freedom of speech traditionally, the effect may actually not be as far-reaching as it is when it is online, considering that you can make a speech in Nigeria, and the speech can go as far as every part of the world. So it's important to have a separate legal framework for rights online.
All right, you think the timing of the bill is what the challenge is? Do you think so?
No, I don't think it's the timing. Not exactly, no. I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
It's not the timing.
All right. Now, a lot of people have been talking about the issue of fake news, because when it comes to the issue of fake news, it thrives more on social media. In the presence of fake news, rumors, and all of that, how would it hamper, or how would it have impact on this issue, this digital bill?
Now, the problem we have in relation to digital rights, it's not just at the fake news, it's not just bordered by the issue of the fake news. However, I would even say that the digital rights bill is not poised effectively to curb fake news. It's not poised effectively. For example, there are provisions where you allow people to exist without identity online. You do not provide a framework to guard such freedom. You also argue that people cannot masquerade as legal entities. What about masquerading as news entities or some other entity? You see, we just need to get these things right. It is timely that we have this bill. It is important to have this bill, but we have to get certain things right. So it goes beyond just fake news. At the same time, contrary to the thinking of people that this is rather giving us rights, to an extent, I think it's also taking away those rights. So it's important we address those.
All right, Nnenna, before I let you go, excuse me, besides the issue of Nigeria blazing the trail or trying to lead Africa in this, do you think Nigeria is ripe for this bill in true terms, if you look at our social media, how it operates?
Absolutely. Nigeria is ripe for this bill, but I think the question should be, is Nigeria ripe for certain provisions in the bill? Now, some of them would be giving a right to internet access. The bill provides for ensuring internet access for places where there is low internet penetration. How do you decide that? It talks about urban poor, rural poor. Are you just focusing on the villages when even in places, parts of Lagos, people do not even have a right, do not even have internet access? Now, talking about online education, is the National University Council poised to allow giving certificates for education that is strictly online education? So we are ripe for the bill. The question is if we are ripe for all the provisions in the bill.
Nnenna, thank you very much for talking to us right now.